Hey everybody, this is Hal Weeks for Stalking the Wild Autoharp. This is going to be a long one, and I'm excited about it, so I don't want to spend a lot of time here in this intro. Today's guest is Mr. Charles Whitmer, who has been a name and an influencer in the Autoharp community for decades. And I am just meeting him really for the first time today, and I'm real excited to share everything that he has done and that he offers to the Autoharp community. He has been pouring himself into his teaching and his offerings, and I'm going to let him tell you about them. So I don't want to take any more time. Let's go to Charles Whitmer. Charles Whitmer, welcome to Stalking the Wild Autoharp.
Thank you. Great to be here.
I'm just really kind of meeting you for the first time. I actually met you, I don't know if you remember, but California Autoharp Gathering, like, I don't know, 2014 or something.
Probably, yeah. Quite a ways back in there. Yeah.
And we were both on staff that year.
Mhm.
And when you're on staff, you don't get a chance to interact with the other teachers very much because
Yeah.
You're just so busy
True.
doing stuff. So
Oh,
we didn't
yeah.
really get a chance to connect, but I'm awful glad to meet you. And I'm
Well,
looking
same here.
forward to this. I've got a ton of questions for you.
All right. Now, I'm ready.
Okay. So you tell me about, well, eventually I'm going to ask you how you got started on Autoharp, but I'm going to say that for a minute. Tell me about music and you as a kid.
Well, for me, music, I had it all through elementary school, general music like a lot of people had. But then sixth grade was sort of like the main start into my career as music. I took up band, public school band, and I was a saxophone player.
Okay.
And and I played all through junior high, all through high school. And then I went to the University of Houston, and I actually was a performance major my first year on saxophone. And but after a year, I decided, well, no, I think I'm going to go into teaching because I really had more of a yearning for teaching. So I majored in sax. My major instrument was saxophone, and that's what I got my bachelor's degree in. And then I began teaching music in the public schools, and then I went back after a few years and while I was teaching and got my master's in music education also. So from there, that's I was actually already teaching, working in the music education world whenever I took up Autoharp.
Okay. And so Autoharp is next. At what point did you plug into the Autoharp?
The first time I remember actually seeing an Autoharp and actually doing something with it was in undergraduate school in one of the music education classes for music teachers. They had us check out one of the old black boxes, the Oscar Schmidts, and all the students, all the music ed students, we had to check one out and sort of learn how to basically strum it, but mainly to learn how to teach from it. At that time, I had no idea that you could get a melody out of an Autoharp. So that was the first time that I had seen an Autoharp. And then at the end of the course, I checked it back in, and that was during my last year of undergrad school. But I didn't go into teaching right away because at that time the pay was really, really, really low. So I continued working in a grocery store, and that's probably the one thing that kind of jump started Autoharp. The reason I took up Autoharp was because of a hernia. What had happened is I was working in the produce department at a grocery store, and I specifically remember on a lower shelf inside the big walk-in cooler was a big sack of carrots. Carrots come in like 40 pounds. It's either 40 or 50-pound sacks. And I remember reaching down and getting the sack of carrots off the bottom shelf to lift it up to put it on the cart. And when I did that, I felt a crunch. I thought, Uh-oh, that can't be good. Well, it turned out to be a hernia. Long story short, I couldn't play saxophone for 6 weeks. And after about 2 weeks of being laid up, just bored to death, couldn't work, couldn't play anything. I remember the Autoharp from undergrad school. I remember that was kind of pretty, so I ordered one. So that was the start of it.
So you use the auto harp to relieve your pain and suffering.
Indirectly, yes, but it also kind of helped relieve the boredom of doing
Mm-hmm.
nothing. But it also was like, more importantly, it was more of a musical outlet. I was
Mm-hmm.
still able to do something musically. That was the worst part out of all of it. You know,
Mm-hmm.
not being able to play an instrument or do anything. Couldn't sing, couldn't play anything.
So did you use auto harp at all to like teach chords and theory and how it all interlocks, or did you
I
just use it to back up your singing?
When I first started it, I started just strumming it. But at the time, even after I had purchased my first auto harp, I still had no idea that anyone could play a melody on it.
So where did you
So
hear that first?
the first book I ever bought was Meg Peterson's book, A Complete Method for Chromo Harp and
Me
Auto
too.
Harp.
Yeah.
And then there was one section in there where she's mentioning melody playing. And then I specifically remember thinking, how on earth can you get a melody out of this? You know, so I started tinkering around with it. Then I started doing a little bit of research, and then I found out information about Maybelle Carter. Even though I'm from Texas, I'm a native Houstonian. I had never heard of the Carter family or Autoharp, and then I got to thinking, well, gosh, this is kind of cool. I'd like to learn to play a melody on it. But there was, like most of us, we're so isolated. There's just no one within a couple hundred miles playing an auto harp. So I had subscribed to the former Frets magazine because they used to list a lot of festivals and things like that in it. And then in Meg Peterson's book, she mentioned something about bluegrass. I had no idea what bluegrass was. I thought it was some sort of rock music because when I was in high school, the band director had it was like a bluegrass music festival or something, and used the band facilities for a weekend. And all the students, we all came back the following Monday. The stereo system was stolen, so I assumed bluegrass must be some sort of rock music. So, but anyhow, but getting back to the story about the bluegrass festival, so I thought, well, I think I'll go ahead and I want to seek out this bluegrass music. So in the calendar of Frets magazine, they had a listing of bluegrass festivals, and I thought, well, I want to go try one of these. So there was one listed in a little ghost town of East Texas, and I thought, well, I'm going to go ahead and go on up there. And it said, and I found out they had something like camping and things like that. So I took my auto harp, went up there, took the tent, and went camping. And I remember walking around the campground, seeing all these guitars and banjos and fiddles and mandolins and dobros and basses. They were all out playing in jam sessions at night. And I was walking around with the auto harp, and people kept mentioning Maybelle Carter, Wildwood Flower. I said, what? So I had no idea of what they were talking about, but some of them kind of explained it to me. Of course, there was not another auto harp player in the entire campground, but people kept asking about it, and they seemed to know what it was. So that sort of one thing led to another, and then I discovered Becky Blackley's Autoharpaholic magazine, and
Mm-hmm.
then shortly after that, just by chance, I went up to Arkansas for a long weekend to go see the Fall Colors. Well, lo and behold, I stumbled onto the Ozark Folk Center, went to an evening concert, and who was up on stage was the first live auto harp player I ever saw in my entire life was Ron Wall.
Oh,
So
okay.
I was absolutely floored when I saw and heard him playing because he was living in Mountain View at
Mm-hmm.
that time, and it was before he got married. And he was on staff as a musician there. So as soon as he went off stage, I literally ran down the aisle, ran backstage, found him and asked him, can you show me a little bit of what you're doing on that? And he was really, really nice. And he showed me some of the strums that he was doing. And then after that, everything else just started falling into place. And That's how I got hooked on Autoharp.
So was he doing a diatonic at that time? I know he kind of came up with it.
At that time, I'm not sure. I don't think so. It's possible he may have been still in the early stages of what he was working on.
Hmm.
Um, that I really don't know. That's a good question. I hadn't really thought about that. I don't think he was. I think he
Hmm.
was still playing on a chromatic. I think, but I could be wrong about that.
Hmm. Wow. Yeah, for me, my the first person I heard was Bonnie Phipps,
Oh,
um, and she lived in Colorado, and so did I. And
yeah.
my mom was a children's librarian,
Hmm.
and Bonnie is in the kids' music world.
Yeah.
And
That's
I did not hear her live, but I worked in a record store, and her album was there.
Yeah.
Uh,
She's phenomenal. Oh my
she,
gosh. Yeah. That she would also be a great person to have as your first live auto harp player, or just first
Mhm.
auto harp player to hear.
I assume at some point you met Becky Blackley.
Yes, actually, during the early years when she started a lot of the auto harp activity at in Winfield, Kansas,
Hmm.
at the Walnut Valley Festival, and I started. That was actually probably my first major festival, aside from the Bluegrass Festival. Where I got a sort of an introduction of the auto harp by No Auto Harps there. But I started going there, and I went there every year, all throughout the '80s and some of the years into the '90s, and so I got to know her, and then I wound up on her staff. I was her reviewer, like whenever there would be any, like when people would have albums or books come out. So I was the main person who would review them for her. But then also she started to have me teach workshops there at the festival in Winfield, since she knew that I was a music teacher. Had taught elementary general music for 3 years here, and then I was a middle school band director for most of the rest of my career. So she knew that I could teach, and I actually had progressed fairly quickly on the auto harp. There was something really natural with my hands going from saxophone to auto harp.
Hmm.
It just fit, and it didn't take me
Interesting.
that. Yeah, it was really strange because it never it didn't happen that quick when I took up guitar. I mean, that was still so much harder, but there was something natural about going from a woodwind instrument to the auto harp. It just fit.
That's interesting because I played clarinet and oboe, um, and recorder quite a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I never made that connection to going to the auto harp. For me, it was the piano that translated
Oh.
over to the auto harp.
Well, I suspect there probably is some connection going from a woodwind instrument to it. Kathy Bertel, she was an
Right,
all-state clarinet player,
right.
and and her playing is equally fabulous. I mean, I'm convinced there's got to be something about going from a woodwind instrument with the fingering to auto harp. Something just clicks. I
Hmm.
know it sure did for me.
That's really cool. Right on. Okay, so was doing the arrangements that you did for the auto harpaholic, was that sort of how you got started doing all of these print arrangements and chordings and
Oh
for
no,
the
at that no at that time, whenever I was on staff with Becky Blackley, I didn't start off doing any arranging or anything like that. I was strictly a reviewer. I wrote articles on the different albums that people came out with. Writing the music down actually came in probably probably I'd say maybe excuse me, the mid '80s. Um, Probably 1985, I think, because that was the first year that I taught up at the Augusta Heritage Center in Elkins, West Virginia. And Becky Blackley and Ivan Stiles had started a program up there with these week-long auto harp classes. And actually, I remember that first class. Some of the people that were in that class: Mary Lee Orthy, Tom Fladmark, I think Mike Herr was in the class there too. But like a lot of people who later became more influential in the auto harp world, somehow wound up in that class. But I originally had signed up as a student because at that time I was playing a lot on the auto harp, and I was actually doing getting hired at bluegrass festivals along with a guitar player friend of mine named Paul Langston. So, but what had happened is I signed up as an advanced student at the classes that Becky Blackley and Ivan Stiles had there in Elkins, West Virginia. And about 2 weeks before the class started, I get a phone call, and it was from the director of the whole program there. Margot Blevins was her name. She was over the Augusta Heritage Center, the workshops. So she called up and she says, "Well, Charles, we have a little bit of a problem." She says, we've got a lot of people signed up, and we have a waiting list, and we don't have enough spots." And she says, "You're the only person that signed up for advanced level." She said, "Would you consider taking a refund and becoming a teacher?" So I said, "Sure," you know. So I did that. So they were able to they were able so since they had added a third instructor, they were able to lift the cap on the number of students that we had. I think we had around 40 students that first year in one class.
Hmm.
So
Wow.
anyhow, so it was then is whenever I started writing out music by hand because computer back then, I mean, it was almost non-existent.
Right.
So, but so I started writing things out by hand and started using them in the classes, and that's actually where my writing out the auto harp arrangement started out. And I gravitated toward Becky Blackley's system of tablature
Hmm.
because as a music teacher, it made so much sense to me because something I've told a lot of my students over the years. It took me about 6 months to learn to play a basic Wildwood Flower melody on my auto harp, and it should not have taken that long, you know, because I was trying to learn some by ear and trying to read, you know, different things in some of the books, but it didn't. And all the knowledge I had from my music training, you know, in undergraduate school didn't help me acquire skills on the auto harp. It that took so much longer because I had to like watch what people were doing and figure out what they're doing and have people show me. So that's when I started using Becky's tablature. I thought I don't want anybody else to have to go through what I did to take
Hmm.
6 months to learn a basic wildwood flower. So I
Right.
thought, okay, and I'm going to always remember what it was like to start, and I always have. So that's why, as you know, I always explain to people, I'm a teacher first, performer second. So and that's something I've even explained to like festivals whenever I get hired. I'm a teacher who performs. I'm not a
Right.
performer who teaches.
Hmm.
So first and foremost, I'm a teacher more than anything. And I just
Hmm.
want to make. I've always wanted to make sure that everybody got off to a good, solid start and have a whole lot easier time than I did when I was learning.
Hmm. And you've just kept going with the
Yeah.
auto harp arrangements and the tab and everything. And this is largely what made me think of doing an interview with you is because um, well, there's a number of things. I teach from a non-paper perspective when I
Hmm.
teach, but um, I frequently have sort of wished that it was different, and thought about doing arrangements myself. I was a composition major in college,
Uh-huh.
but it was just before the days of computer. And when I got out of college, then I got into the auto harp, and I got into my kids and like my children and
Yeah.
everything like that. And I never had the time to learn finale, Sibelius, Muse score,
Yeah.
any of that. And to this day, I struggle with it. And
I can understand that completely. And probably had I not been a middle school band director, I really don't know if I would have done much in the way of sheet music. The only reason that I mainly learned, well, I started out in Finale and then I eventually moved to Sibelius. A colleague recommended to me was because I was using it in my day job as a middle school band director. Whenever I wanted to write things out, it was so much faster and so much neater than my handwritten arrangements.
mhm,
So the skill, so basically, what I eventually did is the skills that I got on the job skills. Literally, I was training myself in Sibelius. I simply took my skills that I was getting as a middle school band director, and then I aimed them at my auto harp activities, and it worked.
So did you have to recreate the Becky Blackley symbols, the pinch symbols, and
Yes.
everything like that in Sibelius?
Um, Kind of, sort of. Sibelius doesn't natively have any kind of autoharp tablature.
Right.
It does have tablature like for guitar and mountain dulcimer,
Mhm.
but our world of the autoharp is not quite as large as they are. So what I did
Not
is
yet. Not
not
yet.
yet, not yet. I
We're
hope,
coming up on them though.
I sure hope so. But anyhow, so what I did, so I tried to think, okay, how can I make this program work for me? Well, I knew that Sibelius could import graphics that are in a TIFF format. That's a format for it's a kind of a high quality format of photographs. Most people are familiar with JPEGs.
Mhm.
TIFF files are like they're much larger files, and they're like more for files, especially if people wanted to blow up a picture, make a really big one. So I knew that it could import TIFF graphics. So then what I did is I had to use Microsoft Office in my day-to-day job too. So what I did is I started tinkering around in PowerPoint. Eventually what I did is I created each one of the symbols in PowerPoint, cropped them, and then exported them as TIFF files. So then I tried importing those files into Sibelius, and it worked. So I simply took a piano template and I adapted it and changed it into a an Autoharp tab template, and then I imported that into Sibelius. So where now, whenever I fire up Sibelius, that shows up as a blank a blank piece, a blank staff that that's capable of showing Autoharp symbols on it. So that's how I was able to sort of massage all of that using
Wow.
not just
Okay.
Sibelius, but I had to use PowerPoint, I had to use Photoshop, and to try to get all of that to work together. And it eventually it took literally took me years to be able to get all of the details, because there were still many things that I couldn't figure out how to do, and none of that is written in the Sibelius handbook. So I was basically trying to figure out ways to trick the program to make it do Autoharp music, to make it do things that it was never designed to do.
Wow.
And where there's a will, there's a way.
That's crazy. That's
Yeah,
crazy. Okay, so you have all of these auto harp arrangements, and you have, well, you tell me how many you have.
well, it depends on what collection. I have two basic collections. One of them has the full tablature that I use, and with all the tablature symbols. And then last November, I created a mirror collection where I took out all of the AutoHarp graphics and put it in a lead sheet format that
Mhm.
just has the melody, the accompaniment chords, and then the melody playing chords up above it.
Okay,
So I want to say I think there's 708 songs in those, and it's
708
songs,
songs.
yeah, and they're contained in 19 volumes. But mainly what I do, the main reason I actually created those arrangements is whenever I teach, like for instance, last week I was teaching at the Midwest Autoharp um, Academy up in Kansas with Tom Schrader. So I have sets of teaching packets where I have extracted a lot of the songs from the different genres to put it in a teaching packet. For instance, the collection that you're referring to, there each packet is a different genre. In other words, there's like Irish songs volume 1, Irish songs volume 2, Carter family songs, etc. But on the teaching packets, I'll have maybe 2 or 3 songs from many different genres
Mhm.
that I teach from.
Mhm.
So like I may have a few O'Carolyn pieces, a few American fiddle tunes, a few Irish airs, or some things like that. But basically, so they were teaching material for me. But there are a lot of auto harp players that like to have those graphics there to actually show them the fingerings, and they're basically the fingerings that I use.
Mhm.
So especially people that have taken my classes are real familiar with music written out like that. But at the same time, there are some people who want nothing to do with tablature. So that's why I
Hmm.
created the lead sheet format version. And then a few months ago, I actually had created a 20 volume set of fake books for any instrument where I removed all the Autoharp material and just left standard notation and accompaniment chords. And I've got those also.
Okay, so is this all available through the JW Pepper website?
Yes.
And I went there and I got confused as
Uh-huh.
far as which is which and what to get, because the somehow the interface, when I went to JW Pepper, it seemed to me like it was for educators, and that educators would know which format they were buying in.
Hmm.
But I couldn't figure it out, and JW Pepper didn't explain it anywhere that I could find.
Yeah, well, you're right about as far as music educators, because J.W. Pepper is the largest dealer of sheet music for in the country, and they mostly cater to like band directors, choir directors, orchestra directors in the public schools and the universities. So that's their primary mission
Uh-huh.
is selling the sheet music arrangements for the different genres. For for mine, the easiest way to find my material and is actually to look at it. If you simply go to their website and simply type in my name and Autoharp, then it should pull up just my catalog.
Mhm.
And then you can click on like one packet of songs, and it'll let you preview and look through the whole material, and you can actually see if it's got Autoharp tab or is it the lead sheet format. So
Okay.
that's probably the best way to do it is simply to you can either do a search for just Autoharp, but then they do have a lot of other things for Autoharp, like Meg Peterson's books and some other people that have books out like that. But if they
So
want to look at
each,
just
go ahead.
I was just gonna say, if they simply just go to jwpepper.com and just they could just put my last name, Whitmer, and then Autoharp and just search. And it
Okay.
should pull up just my collection.
Can you get a print copy? Can you get like a spiral bound?
Yes. Yes. If anybody orders from them, they can get the printed copy, or they have just like people that order band music or choir music from them, but they also have a service called ePrint, which I actually used to use sometimes even as a band director, where it allows you to buy the music and then you can print it off on your printer,
Mhm.
and your printer connects to their servers, and then that way there's no shipping charges.
Right. Okay.
So, the two versions that you saw, one would be with AutoHarp tab, and the other one without.
Okay. So each each collection is available with and without,
Right.
and available as a, is it a download, or is it you connect to the server and you print from them?
Um, there's actually a third option in there. You can either buy a print copy and they'll mail it to you, or you can print it off on your own printer,
Uh-huh.
or unless I'm mistaken, you can actually, like a lot of computers, for a printer, you have the option of creating a PDF version.
Okay.
So if you make your PDF creator the printer that you print from using the ePrint service, you should be able to simply create a PDF version of it.
Oh, okay. All right. And that way you can save it to your
Yes.
computer if you're using um,
Yeah,
um,
like iPads and things like that, because
right,
a lot because more and more musicians are going to tablets.
right.
So a
Mobile
lot of them,
sheets and stuff like that.
yes,
Yeah.
oh yes, and it's so much easier, than hauling around, big bundles of sheet music, like a
Yes,
lot of us used
exactly.
to. Yeah.
Exactly. Okay. Well, that straightens some things out for me. That clears some things up.
If they just go to jwpepper.com and they can search, just put in my name and then put Autoharp after it.
Okay. The next thing I want to ask you is, will you play for us?
Sure, be
Um,
glad to.
I because you have an alleged reputation as an auto harpist, so I hear.
in a few places.
Yes, yes. So, oh, good. It's the festival model. Wow, that one's shiny.
This one is a Bob Taylor.
Oh, it's a Bob Taylor.
This was
Okay.
number 13. It was the last one he made.
Clapping trees.
Yes, yes,
Yeah, Karen's got one of those too.
yeah. It's yeah.
And so does Tom.
Tom Schrader's got one too. Yeah.
And okay, Tom's is I don't know about yours, but Tom's has this harmonic in it. I would recognize the sound of his auto harp anywhere because it's got this harmonic that whistles along at an octave or two octaves above the melody, and
Oh wow.
it's lovely. So I'm going to be
I
listening
didn't know
for that
that.
in yours.
Well, it was interesting because last week, whenever we were on Thursdays, he and I do like a 45-minute kind of a joint uh, teaching demo session, and it's probably the only place, and he always mentions it, the only place where you'll ever hear two Bob Taylor harps being played together at the same time. So, and his looks very similar to mine. This one is a 3-key diatonic,
Mm-hmm.
and and it's got the switches like Oscar Schmidt had, and and actually this one, if memory serves me correctly, this one could not be used in a contest like Winfield because there's a limit of 37 strings. This one has 38.
Uh,
The string length is just a little bit longer than standard
okay.
from here to here, and we had discovered that because I guess that was the last time that I was booked at the Mount Laurel Festival. I wanted to order some sets from Tom Fladmark
Mm-hmm.
for this, and he had to make this, and that's when he still had the string making business, so he had to measure this because the strings are a little bit longer than standard.
Okay.
As a result, I do tend to break more strings on this harp than my other ones.
Take it away.
Okay, I'll do a old time fiddle tune. It's called Flop-Eared Mule.
Okay. Very nice. Very nice.
Oh, thank you.
And I will let the viewers in on a secret. We actually are recording Charles's audio on his end, and then he emails that to me, and I substitute it in so that you can really hear well what the auto harp sounds like instead of what it sounds like through Zoom, which is what we're recording the interview through. And I'm looking forward to hearing that because it did sound kind of warbly through Zoom.
Yeah.
So, okay. Will you do another one?
Sure. Okay. This is probably one of I would say maybe among the first 10 songs that I ever learned on Autoharp, and it's always still been one of my favorites. The Old Spinning Wheel.
Thank you for playing that.
Oh, well, thank you.
That reminds me of, do you remember Betty Waldron?
Oh, yes. She was one of the people after Ron Wall who I tried to model my playing after.
Okay. All right. She had that on her album. I had the LP.
Yes, I had that. That's what inspired me to learn that tune like that.
Okay. All right. All right. I love the old stuff, the old timey
Yeah.
stuff. So we will be posting the links for your information. Tell people about where you can be caught as a teacher, where you're teaching. You have a yearly cycle of things that you do, and we want to know about that too.
It kind of varies. Every year has always been different. There, every so many years, I'm booked at Mountain Laurel Autoharp Gathering. This past summer, I was booked for the first time at the Northwest Autoharp Gathering. Occasionally, I've been over the years an instructor at the Dulcimer Festival in Mount Dora, Florida, and then at the Ozark Folk Center in Mountain View, Arkansas. The one place that's probably the most regular right now is probably the classes that I do teach with Tom Schrader in Leavenworth, Kansas, the Midwest Auto Harp Academy classes. And under normal years, we have a week long class, an intermediate week in April, and then an advanced week in October. But this year and for next year, because of the current pandemic situation, we combined them into just one week. So, and then there have been a number of online festivals. So I've already taught twice with the Quarantune Dulcimer Festival,
Mhm.
and that's evidently a really huge festival because they've got I think around 60 or 70 different instructors for mostly dulcimer, and so I'm actually doing more online of the type of classes for auto harp.
Mhm.
So generally, if someone's on Cyberpluckers or any of the other auto harp forums, they'll probably find places where they can maybe track me down if they want. So I'm easily trackable.
Trackable, downable.
Yeah, and if they want to ever get a hold of me, I mean, my email address Charles Whitmer Autoharp at gmail.com is probably the easiest. And so usually once a year I do a mail out. Well, Tom and I usually do a mail out mainly for our classes in Kansas. But what I also do in that same, it's a postal mail out because we don't really do a lot of email work. But I usually put where I'm going to be uh, in there. I usually put a page in there for both Tom and I showing where we're going to be and when we're going to be for the coming year. So
Mhm.
that would be another way if someone wanted to get on our postal mailing address, I could easily put them on that.
Well, that's great. Charles, thank you for coming and being on the show and for contributing to Stalking the Wild Auto Harp with your time and your talent. And
Well, thank you for having me.
we have enjoyed it and enjoyed learning about you.
Well, thanks a lot. I'm glad to share whatever I can. And there's there's not that much to me, so I'm just out here having fun on the auto harp. I want to make
What
sure everyone else
did
does too.
did you ever think that the auto harp would do for you what it's done for you?
Not really. Probably the moment I think is whenever when it really hit me. I guess would be probably in 2008, and that was the year that I was inducted into the Auto Harp Hall of Fame. So that was probably the moment. It's like, this might be something here.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Okay. Thanks for coming, Charles.
Well, thank you for having me. Glad to be here.
My pleasure. So there you have it, folks. Charles Whitmer, thanks for being on Stalking the Wild Auto Harp. It was a pleasure to interview you. There are links in the below for his website where to obtain his sheet music offerings. So I'm real pleased that I could present him to you here today. Go peruse his sheet music offerings and pick some up, because his sheet music is particularly accurate and it's all planned out for your Autoharp enjoyment. Remember about my Patreon. If you want to support this program, patreon.com/halweeks is where to go to chip in a few bucks a month to keep this whole thing happening. So until next time, I'm Hal Weeks for Stalking the Wild Autoharp. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.